Hello, everybody. Call this meeting of the Shoreham Town Council to order. It is Monday, July 7th. My voice sounds so echoey and authoritative in a way. I feel like I'm announcing at Grand Central Station or Fenway Park. It's Monday, July 7th. It is 6:50. Nick, do we have to go into close for this? It's just been so clear what we're working on, but
Oh, no, I don't think so.
okay. I'm gonna open the door then. No need to. No mode. You're welcome.
I should have asked Amy, is that okay with you? Great.
Hey, guys. So first order of business is Nick with the wall.
Yeah,
Feels like a Pink Floyd album.
I think we're getting there. So over the past couple of weeks, Amy and I have had some productive conversations with the property owners. The litigation is ongoing, but I think we've reached an agreement whereby the wall is going to be moved. Amy, what was your best estimation? There was some issue with getting a landscaping company who was
Sure.
ready, willing,
September,
and able on island to do that, but I think it's been lined up. Amy, what was your understanding as to a date?
September 1st.
Great.
Great.
September 1st.
Great. Any questions for Nick or Amy on this?
Well, you know, just to put, I'd like to put in the record, that there was conversation about apologizing for the way this has been handled over the last year and a half, too, and conversations that, apologies for the.
That's your record. I don't apologize for anything I did here on this. So, I mean, I'm just saying, if you want to put that on the record, I'll put on the record a list of things that I think were problematic about this.
I thought we had that conversation when we asked Nick and Amy to talk to them.
That we wanted to be gracious to people who are property owners, but I'm not going to apologize for the last 18 months because the fact is a wall was built on town land.
There was a long period of time, there was no conversation then that really precipitated the major crisis that we were in. No one would talk to them. And we had a conversation at this table about that. And as part, my understanding was as part and parcel of that, we were gonna have Amy, as a new town manager, apologize for the way that was handled and how we got to this point. Now, if that's not your recollection.
It is not my recollection. I mean, I think it's really important to be kind and really important to be gracious. And I think gracious was the word that was used during that conversation. But I am not, I would not have agreed to an apology because I don't think that's certainly not where I was.
I'm going to jump in.
Go
Just-
ahead.
And Nichols kick me under the table if he needs to. But to characterize, we have had a number of conversations. I have directly spoken with the Anderson several times. Nick and I have spoken together with them, and he's had some conversations as well. And so throughout those interactions, there's been an effort on behalf of the town to underscore how unfortunate it has been that this process has gone on so long. I would stop short of going further than that.
That part of that was in part of the minutes. I'm fine with that.
Great. Me too.
Nick, is there anything you'd add to that?
You perfectly said, Amy. It was a very respectful conversation. You and I have had conversations with them together, separate, like you said. It was very professional, very respectful. We listened to them. I think we had good conversations with them, understanding everything that went into where we're at today and hopefully moving forward in a positive light. But what I can say is I think the conversations over the last maybe couple weeks, Amy, were very well received, and I think the town was, uh, yeah, it's tough to say because I'm a part of it, but represented adequately in those conversations in being sensitive to the circumstances, in light of the positions of all parties.
I find you in most cases to be more than adequate, Nick.
Thank you, Keith. But long and the short of it, it was good conversations. Ultimately, it resolves with one party doing something they don't want to do. So we tried to be very sensitive to that.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? So can I ask a question before we move on to our next thing, since we don't have to go out of closed? Do we have to wait until 7 to begin? Okay, great. So we're waiting until 7 to begin. 7 minutes. Me? Hey, Nick?
Yes,
Did you hear that?
I did not.
We just called the Board of License Commissioners to order. Can you walk us through
Sure.
what we have here, please? Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Keith. So, what's before the board this evening is an application that was, by my estimation, in front of you in the same form on June 17th. That was denied by a majority of the board. Thereafter, it appears as though the applicant has reapplied, submitting the same application for all intents and purposes. There's a few other materials, but for all intents and purposes, the same application. Procedurally, that's unusual. Usually, in the procedure, one would expect is that when an applicant is aggrieved by a decision of the board, they would pursue an appeal. It doesn't appear that that was taken, and that appeal is through the state of Rhode Island. Um, so a few options tonight. One, if it's the prerogative of the board, you may not take up this application. Again, the applicant has certain appellate rights, and if they choose to pursue them in light of a denial from a month ago, they may do that. Um, Conversely, and again, I'm thinking somewhat outside the box, this may be taken up as a motion to reconsider if and only if a member of the majority who voted to deny the application were so inclined to make that motion. But otherwise, I think it's either you don't take it up, you rest on your decision from a month ago, and the applicant has certain appellate rights that are guaranteed by law, or if a member of the majority were inclined to make a motion to reconsider the application and that motion carried, the application could be reconsidered.
Okay. Any thoughts, council members? Or liquor license commissioners?
Just a question for Nick.
Sure.
Because we reconvened as the Board of License Commissioners, does that recognize this as a new process? Or should we not convene if we're not going to hear it?
No, I think to even begin this conversation of what you folks are supposed to do, you have to be, even though, again, you're members of the town council, also sitting as a board of license commissioners, you do in fact have to change your hats, albeit temporarily. So I don't think you're doing anything inappropriate as we stand here right now. You had to convene to take up a matter that was filed before you so that you can make a decision on how to handle that matter.
So I was not on the prevailing side on this, but I would like to take it up again. I think there's been nothing in the we I think did something that was probably a model with Persephone on F1 licenses, which is, if I recall correctly, we gave the first time Persephone's applied, we gave two licenses at a time to make sure that we weren't walking before we could run, was that as a description. And as far as I can tell, as far as I'm aware, there have been no problems, no objections, no concerns. So that's in my opinion, particularly given the range of options for the consumption of alcohol. This is about as low impact as it gets. People eating their brownie fudge sundaes and maybe having an espresso martini. As I said before, I'm perfectly fine with the brownie fudge sundae. I do not partake of the espresso martini, but I wouldn't stop anybody from doing that.
I mean, I also was in the minority on this vote, but I would hope that this is something that we could take up again. I ran a retail business on Dodge Street for 29 years. It's a lovely street. This is a wonderful group of businesses that participate in this event. And it's a very small event. It's not, it's not a carnival. It's not a festival. It's pretty mellow. It's kids getting their face painted. It's artists, setting up a booth occasionally. It's cheese tastings, it's dessert. You know, if anything, I closed my store too soon. I would love to be a part of this. So, I just don't see, why, obviously I'm not in favor. I was not in favor of denying the license. Still am not. I hope it's something that can be reconsidered. I think we have lots and lots of family-friendly events on the island. We have movies on the beach, and we have Blues on the Block. We have oodles of activities through the Nature Conservancy, the library, the Historical Society that are all alcohol-free. So glass float hunting, we have it's just, we offer an awful lot out here for families. And this is still for families. It's just like, it's not a bar atmosphere from what I've ever seen. It's just like an offering, one night a week for a few weeks.
Okay, so I was among the three that voted against it. I leave it to the other two to decide. I haven't changed my mind because I don't think that the existence of this license impacts the event at all. I mean, the whole point was that this event can take place without an espresso martini, but if you really want one, you can get one even on that street. Until we decide to open it, I don't think we hear from the audience. Yeah. So, I think we had a lengthy conversation. I think we thought about it a lot. I don't see that the enhancement of a coffee shop to have some alcohol should have any impact on whether that event takes place or not. And I credit you all for creating that, but it went on for, see, Persephone, you've had it for 2 years. This would be the 3rd year, and the event has taken place for more years than that, so it has survived. But that's my feeling. I don't know how the other two feel.
Mine is a resource-based decision is why I said no. And you ladies on Dodge Street do an excellent job. I mean, you're all women owners. The biggest disconnect for me is the tie-dye and the booze. Yeah, I mean, we denied the Halloween application, which would have been the same license, correct?
Same license, different circumstance.
Yeah, it's different circumstance, and that was a private residence or mixed-use building. So that's where I stand. And that's where my no is. The biggest one is the resources.
My position is we had a hearing and I stand by what the original hearing was. I don't see a reason to rehear.
Persephone, would you like to speak? Go ahead.
Well,
Just let her speak. Well, all of the application.
I understand that you don't, that you've made your decision. I just think that, yeah, is the green light on? Yes. No, it's not. Oh, sorry. Looked so bright. Thank you. I understand and I respect your decision. And like I said in my letter, and Nancy, I don't know if you read the letter, but we ran this my business ran it at a loss for 6 years. And we found a creative way and a license that recently had opened up for us to apply for to bring a little bit more income to sustain that Dodge Street event. And the alcohol was not where the tie-dye was. That was another business down the street. The alcohol was within my building that serves, it's a restaurant. I serve food during the day, and this is a separate event at night where I serve different offerings. This allowed that income from the alcohol sales allowed me to continue to do this for 2 years with no incident. And it supported a community of women who live and run businesses on this island, live here year round. And we believe we've created an event to attract people that we want to see coming to this island. And without this license, this event cannot continue. I cannot continue to run an event at a loss. I have a wonderful coffee business, you're right. And this event is outside of my normal business hours. I feel passionately about it. I love bringing art to the center of town. And to not be able to do that now is a shame. And I feel like you're not supporting a community event run by community-run businesses, and rather putting the blame or the fallout of other poorly run operations on this very simple, within this license. We are under the hours that the license is offered. We are within the structure of the license. And so I just wanted to say that, and I feel it's really unfortunate that as a community member, not even as the person requesting the license. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wants to talk before we do that? Is that okay if we?
Carolyn Collins, owner of Lazy Fish on Dodge Street. I feel like nobody even read our letters. Did you read our letters?
Yeah, yes, we all got the letters. We all read the letters.
Do you realize that it's a financial? That we've all been running this. We're all exhausted on Thursday nights. It's a wonder that we've kept it going for 9 years. And we've found a way. Persephone is the heart and soul of this. And we've found a way to make it work. She's found a way. She did it. She jumped through all the hoops, went for the license that was appropriate, had it for 2 years, and was then denied, and I think was floored that she was denied, so unprepared. We are now prepared. We wrote letters. We're all here, a contingent of people who work night and day, and we open our businesses on Thursday nights, and it's a wonderful event. And this is in jeopardy. It might get shut down because of this ruling. Because Persephone is, again, the heart and soul of it. And that is, everything is kind of circles around the popularity of those desserts, and that we put artists on the patio. It's a wonderful event. And though that license has allowed her to do it and run at a not even a win-win. She's just basically it's a break even. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. A break even. And I feel like your statements, that as though you haven't even read our letters. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, yeah, and just going forward, we have those community grants. You might want to apply for one at some point if you need some money for something. It's almost, it's almost sad to say that this wonderful event is not going to survive without espresso martini.
What's sad to say is that you feel as though people should go to the Surf or the National
No.
to get their booze.
No,
Why can't they have a dessert? Because basically what you're saying is go there and have a dessert as well.
no. We had this conversation.
But she's been here 2 years ago, and that is what
That's my opinion only, all right?
I respect it. I respect it, but I don't agree with it. Thank you.
Fine, that's fine.
I know there's a lot of passion behind this, and I'm one of the seasonal business owners on Dodge Street. I come to you just appealing from a purely business aspect, and we're on Dodge Street running retail businesses for 3 months out of the year. If you have any idea how hard it is to run a business that is successful enough to support yourself and sustain yourself during 3 months, you will know that you will jump through every hoop you possibly can to make it work, and you're up all night trying to figure it out. If Persephone
I ask for a motion to adjourn the Board of License Commissioners. Second,
Second.
all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right, public comment. Anybody? Consent agenda? Oh, yeah, come on.
Hi, Thea Manje, Beachcomber on Dodge Street. I just want to say that this whole hearing is just kind of disappointing coming from a young person on Block Island that doesn't really drink at all. I don't think I would ever order a drink from Persephone as much as I love her. It's just not my thing. But I think ultimately there seems to be some sort of critical disconnect between what is being offered and also kind of really taking our eye off the prize. Like there are so many huge things at stake in the community, and this is by far an event that contributes far more than it detracts from the community in terms of resources and all the other things that I'm sure are very, very legitimate concerns. But to me, it's just, it's really disheartening to see this sort of enterprise taken on by the council with such aggression, really, to really be so firm on it, when again, there are so many greater things with that exhaust our resources in so many ways that seem to be not looked at with such sincere concern. Thanks.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Keith, I'd like to.
Yeah.
I'd like to pull C, D, and under E 2, 3, and 4 off for a little more discussion.
Okay, so we have A, B,
E1.
D, and E1.
D wanted to pull off also,
D you want to pull out?
please.
Okay, so just so that I'm, we have A, B,
In E1.
And
and
E1.
E. Thank you. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
He pulled up C, D,
C, okay.
E.
Item C.
E, D, E, 2, 3, 4.
So, I have just a quick question on C. That's the contract, right, with, I like to, in general, just, it's not an issue with the contract, with the, I like to have them pulled up to look at them in general. But as I look through on Allison's, so it's clear that total is 45,000. I know not to exceed 45,000. And the other contract was roughly, I think, was 50,000. So there really isn't an increase. The job's kind of been split, right?
There's been a shift in tasks between the GIS work and what we call the planning work, which is different now that we have a planner in Libre Planners. Some of the work Allison continues to do, particularly on the grant administration side and working with the Resiliency Committee and some of the other projects. It's still very valuable for us to classify that work as planning work in order to meet some of the grant standards. So that's why you see a combined GIS planning contract, even though the majority of her work that's paid through the town budget is the GIS. So it is a reduction in total maximum, but there's a shift in the type of work that's being done as
Right.
well.
And my point, I think it's important people know that they split up, it basically is the same, what we had before, only jobs been split up, correct?
Yes.
That was in the budget.
Yeah, in the budget. So I don't want people to be misconfused to think that from that end of it.
Yep, that's all supported by the budget.
Yeah.
So, but we have the planners who in their contract reference the comp plan. We have reference to the comp plan in Allison's contract, but we're still going out for an RFQ for someone to help with the updating. Is that correct?
We are going out to bid for comp plan specific work. So it is allowable under each of their contracts, but we have not assigned either party that work.
But I would assume that their contract covers that they could be a resource
Yes.
for anyone that we hire.
Yep.
Okay, great.
I'd make a motion to approve Allison's contract.
Third
with the town
second.
of Strong.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. D. D.
Yeah, on D, I just had a question for Judy, which by the letter we're sending that we sign on as a community, which I'm in support of, that doesn't obligate us to anything. I don't, but maybe you could.
You are correct. So this is a letter to the University of Rhode Island Coastal Institute in support of Block Island becoming a climate response demonstration site. And I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at the website, but it's very interesting what they're doing in other communities. What this will do for this community is attract funding, if there is any, with all the cuts. But anyway, and attention. So like the other communities, it's a sort of a nexus for people to focus on our issues and attracting researchers out here. The obligation is all things that the Coastal Resilience Committee are already obligated to do, which is ensuring that research is focused on the areas that the community wants it to be focused on, engaging with other stakeholders in the community, helping the Coastal Institute connect with other stakeholders in the community, and then helping them support outreach and awareness of what they're doing. All of those things are things that are within our purview. So there's no obligation, certainly no financial obligation on the part of the town.
And
That's
if-
correct.
If funding should come back around, it will give us an edge.
Correct. Yes, yes, that's correct. It would be similar to what Dr. Annette Grilly is doing right now, modeling the ocean conditions off of Crescent Beach, and putting in things like artificial reefs and other things into her model to help us understand what would happen if we chose to deploy that. And she's doing that for a bunch of different options. So it would be that kind of work. It's scientific research. Marsh migration, things like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Great, thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I'd make a motion to support for the letter of support. on
Second.
behalf of the town.
Is there a second? All
Second.
those in favor indicate by saying
Aye.
aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. It's the next one, E2.
Yeah, there was a letter, actually, 2 and 3, I kind of wanted to address. There was, the first one was the letter from Leo Leone. I was hoping, or just wanted to ask if that's been referred over to the police department, because it seems like it's more of than a council thing than if it has been great. And then on the next letter from Craig Curtis, who took the time to write about noise, I appreciate him taking the time. I think if that letter, a copy could also be with the moped safety committee, because some of those things that he addresses in that letter is the beeping of the horn and the I think that whistle thing or whatever when the boat comes in. And maybe when we meet, they could that might be something that might be addressed from that end of it. So if we could just send which I know you guys have a copy, but so that the rest of that committee may see from that end of it, it might be beneficial.
Can we just have a motion to accept those 2 pieces of correspondence, please?
So move.
Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
And on item 4, I asked, and I'll defer this over to you, Keith. I just think that it's Keisha had received the from the International Municipal Clerks Association, and I just thought it would be good if we could pull that off and just acknowledge it so it doesn't.
Absolutely. Extraordinary accomplishment. We're very, very lucky with the team that has been built there. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'll just congratulate Keisha as well. It's been 4 years in which the moment that she hit that desk, she applied for this certification, which is a program that does take really at the minimum 4 years, and she has pulled it off probably as quick as I've ever seen it. So I'm just excited for her, and I know that Laurel is working towards that as well. They're both going to be going to school next week to the New England Institute for
Oh,
clerk.
terrific.
Yeah,
That's great.
So I'm excited for both of them, but certainly
That's
want to
wonderful.
congratulate Keisha.
Wonderful. All right. Item 5. We have nothing new here. Motor vehicles for hire, sewer district, water district conservation. Please. Item 6, can I have a motion to convene the public hearing? A second?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Kate, you're up.
I'll start.
Before you start, I knew you would be here today, but that squall that came through, that blow that happened over the weekend, I just wanted to say publicly, for those who spend time on the pond, I know what you had to do, and you and your team did a marvelous job there. Thank you. That was crazy, how instantaneous it was, even at our house on Beacon Hill. It was astounding. And you guys just, as is so frequently the case, managed it, pulled it off, kept people safe, and just from the community, thank you.
And it couldn't have happened at a time when the harbor wasn't.
I know.
Both old and new harbor.
Better than the fireworks.
Anyway, thank you. Go ahead, Aim.
So the dry things, the insurance. This has actually been on the council's radar and the Harbors Department radar for quite some time. It first came as a recommendation from the Harbors Committee to the Town Council in 2003, but it was never codified into ordinance. So that's what you have in front of you, a proposal to update the ordinances requiring that all vessels moored or anchored in the waters of Block Island for more than 2 weeks present proof of insurance to the harbor master. And since our ordinances actually refer to insurance requirements in the procedures for Old Harbor Dock as well, we've updated that section for consistency.
Great. Do I recall correctly, this has been the policy, but this codifies it as an ordinance?
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that correct? If
That
I'm
is
not
correct.
That's fine. I just,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yeah, just Kate, is there some rationale for setting it after 2 weeks as opposed to when you first come in and tie up?
There is no rationale. It's just, that was a matter of someone who is going to be here longer than just visiting. I have people that have already sent me their information before they're even here. So the word has already gotten out. It's completely supportive of the community, the boating community, not just New Harbor, also Old Harbor.
It would be a bit of an administrative burden to get into a space where we were technically requiring it, but not
for
administering or
everything. It's just a
enforcing.
little-
So that gives actually the department the latitude to let people, I don't want to say slip, but be here for a few days without having to worry that they're not doing enough enforcement.
And as long as the information is getting out there, I would say, let's not change it now. Something comes up in a couple of years where, but this is fine.
And I just have to say regarding the incident that we had on the 3rd, the weather incident, of the 30 plus boats that we were dealing with, everyone had insurance. Everyone has registration. They're willing to hand it over. It's a pile of paperwork, but that's what we're requiring and that's what they're sending me. So.
Great.
Kate, my question is, can we have an ordinance that requires you, or whatever in the plan, requires you to have insurance when you have insurance, and then separate showing than when it's in the harbor? Because even if we're not required but it's an ordinance that we require them to have. So right now, if I had a 30-foot boat and I come in for less than 2 weeks, I don't have to have insurance. Is that correct?
That's
Or is there
correct.
something that says I do?
No,
Okay, is it worth it, even though we're not going to be checking it, have as a requirement any boat over some footage, in the Great Salt Pond, is required to have be registered and have insurance. And I'm not saying that you need to go out and check that, but if we have a squall like we did last night or something and the boat doesn't, you know, that it's, now they're in violation of not having that also from that end of it. Is there an advantage to it?
I'm gonna
Go for it.
my feeling about the disadvantage of that is I don't like having laws on the books that we're not going to administer on a regular basis. So I see what your point is, but it's going to be easily overlooked. It's not. I think it's something we could shorten the time frame if it became a problem, but based on the experience that we've had over the last 10 to 20 years, it's not usually your summer population that creates an issue. If there's an important part to me to this ordinance, it's actually the November 1st to April 30th named insured section. To me, that is actually more important than the other.
I don't.
That's when we have an
Because
issue.
that's the issue that we're dealing with now.
No, I understand. I'm in 100% agreement with that. I'm taking a wider scope and saying the policy is you have to be registered and insured to have a boat over whatever, it's 15 feet, whatever it is, in the waters there. Now, there's not a, you know, just like the car registration, you know, it's if it gets called upon. But if that's the rule that is, that doesn't mean you have to go out and check each one for it. The onus becomes the other way with it, because you could end up with a couple boats on the beach with that. It's not just in the November. And I get the burden to put the work on, but I don't see there being any work.
I think there's not the lawyer, but deliberately not putting the question to them at the moment. But I think we're also trying to avoid any perception of limiting access to the waters of New Shoreham, so that we're not getting ourselves into any legal areas.
I can tell
particularly
you,
with
boats out there and a boat breaks free and hits it. I want that boat to have insurance. You're protecting the people that are in there also, not just.
So,
from the other
so
side.
my long-term goal and my long-term view on this is this goes statewide, that when you register your boat, you have to have insurance, just like a vehicle.
Right.
So, working with the Harbor Masters Association on this and seeing what they're getting from their communities and what they have on their books. And then we can go from there and make it more New England, or make it even more East Coast. So that's my long-term goal, is to see this be an actual,
No,
not
I'd
just
like to
a-
accept what you have worded here. I'm with it 100%. But I do think that there's an advantage to it being required, ideally at the state level, like you have. And if we can't get it.
but we don't have it at the state level.
I understand that. I mean, we don't have the authority to make it the state level,
Right.
but we might have the authority within the Great Salt Pond. And the reason, I'll say one more time why I think it's important, not only if we have derelict boats that go ashore, but also if you have a boat, your boat breaks free and hits mine, you don't have insurance, now you're also in violation. So for my recovery towards you, it gives me another bite from that end of it. So I don't want to slow this down, but I think it's something to keep in the back of mind, because I think it helps not only the town, but it helps every other boater. Think of it like your car. If you get hit with someone without insurance, the chase is on. So, thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Please, yeah.
Just, I mean, it's a part of me that agrees with you, Bill, but in this day and age, I think generally speaking, most people over a certain length on their boat carry insurance. No? No?
I would love to think that, but
God, you would think that's one of the.
they, so what they can do is they get their insurance, then they get it registered, and then they drop their insurance. Because they think it's a cheap, easy way to have summer housing. I'm trying to get rid of that. So what happened this past fall and winter was a prime example.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the word is out that we are extremely serious about this. You need to take care of your property.
Can I ask a question, because I've been asked it? What's the status of that boat?
It is insured. We're just waiting on the salvage
Gotcha.
company.
That's,
to
that,
super-
I don't, that was not a, what the heck's
Yep.
going on? It was just, I get asked, so I'd like
yeah.
a simple declarative sentence.
It's a complete eyesore, but no, it is insured and that is not on that's not on the town's tab.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I have a motion to approve this proposed amendment to ordinance chapter 9? Second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Can I have a motion to adjourn this public hearing? Second.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. And can I have a motion to open another public hearing? Second. Thank you,
Thanks,
Kate. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Before us now are the New Shoreham liquor license rules and regulation changes that you have in your packets. I don't know whether Amy or Millie starts this.
I can walk through it with you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You'll find much of it is housekeeping. But if you want to go through page by page, we can do that. The substantial changes right now are under the new application A4D5, which was something that Bill had brought up at the when we were last having this discussion. And this says description that requires the applicant to provide a description of the measures taken to keep alcohol consumption in designated areas.
I think it's a great idea.
And that was added to both the new license application and to the renewal application. So that's something that we would add to, assuming it's adopted, we would add to our, our license application.
Millie, one of the, under where it says a description of measures to take to keep alcohol, would it be appropriate for the word in there to be to contain and control alcohol consumption? And the reason I say the contain and control, because I think there's and as we spoke about it, I think it's important that the areas you define, that's your responsibility to contain an area and also to control the flow of it. If we would add that in those two words between keep and alcohol.
Can you just make that motion, Bill?
Sure. Make a motion to add contain and control following keep and alcohol on 5. Or do you want me to just read it?
I think
description of
I
measures
think
to-
we would eliminate keep. Measures taken to contain and control consumption, right?
Yes.
Is there a
thank you.
second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Billy, the question above it I had, and only for understanding it, I'm sure there's a good reason. On 2, we take out at the interim meeting in November. Is that just to give flexibility?
Yes, it is. We've moved that liquor hearing, I would say at least 10 years ago now, to allow it as being a standalone hearing instead of trying to stick it in with the interim meeting.
Thank you. As the person who has to chair that meeting, I say thank you.
So, and there was a question about the clearance from the fire marshal that, that you had 12 months from the applicant's date to do that. Is there some reason why it's 12 months? I mean, if we do the licenses in November, technically you could run through the summer without getting any clearance.
And that was initially, this was something that was initially put in after the Harborside fire. I'm going to make the assumption that the 12 months was to give people enough time for compliance. I can't see any reason why we couldn't shorten that. And I'm not sure if Nick has any thoughts on that as well.
I agree with you. I think we can shorten that. That was put in there around the harbor side and shortly thereafter in conjunction with consultation with the state fire marshal himself.
Right.
About getting everybody in compliance. It was, excuse the pun, a pants on fire situation. We were concerned about life safety. But in the next iteration, I'm sure Millie will make a note of it. We could certainly address that.
Millie, can I ask on that also? if I have a business and the fire marshal comes in and does a life, whatever, and says, hey, listen, you know, you need to add 2 more sprinklers or whatever it might be, but we're gonna give you 4 months to do it. Okay, so I'm not in violation because I have that, I understand that. What if the fire marshal comes in and says, hey, listen, your sprinkler system's not working, it's not in code, and he says, your business is shut down. Is there a mechanism that goes over to us for the license itself?
Billy, you mind if I jump in?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so Bill, good question. Having been part of those conversations, again, with the fire marshal himself, going back maybe 2 years at this point, whatever it was. 2 things. One, it was represented that the fire marshal's office wouldn't hold up somebody for minor matters that might not technically comply with the rule of the law, but don't threaten life safety. Additionally, there is a process if somebody weren't satisfied with a determination of the state fire marshal for them to appeal. The state fire marshal said that he would put in writing that an appeal is taken and that he's not taking an adverse position against an application so long as lives weren't at risk. So that was considered when we made these amendments way back when.
So I think that's great, Nick. If I could just follow up on Bill's question, because the way that I understood the question is really a loop closing question,
The connect.
which is how does Millie know, as our liquor czar, how does Millie know that there's been some snafu between a licensee and the state fire marshal? Is that right, Bill?
Yeah, that's it, exactly.
So the onus is on the licensee to check all the boxes that are required in their application. So it's not an obligation of Millie's. It's for the applicant to work with the state fire marshal to get appropriate written certifications. How they work that out is between them, and ultimately, if they're able to get clearance in the form of a written certification, they present that to Millie. The onus is
So basically, in order for us not to know that, an applicant would have to essentially lie and check a box that shouldn't be checked.
I think it's more than lying because they would have to.
Yeah, I was using a euphemism.
Yeah, they'd have bigger problems on their hand if they're making representations on behalf of the state fire marshal and submitting written certifications on his or her behalf.
So I guess the question would be, is there a connect between the state fire marshal's office and our building official? If he or she says, hey, listen, we've shut this business down because it can't operate, is there a mechanism that that goes to our building official? At that point, Millie would be in the.
So I can't point to where in the codes those things intersect at the moment, but from a practical perspective, those communications are open. So that, for example, when the fire marshal had trouble certifying places to open at the beginning of this season, they were in direct communication with the Block Island Fire Department, the building office here, and my office. So from a practical perspective, those communications are happening.
Yep.
It used to be a written notification that came through the manager's office too. I don't know if they still do that or not.
But yeah, since not always a formal letter, but there are communications.
But you get a heads up that says,
Yep.
hey, Dave Lewis, hasn't cleaned out that hood in 14 years.
It generally not at that detail level,
yeah.
but such and such an establishment has not been certified by the state fire marshal to open for business. And this is the process that everyone is going through in order to meet those conditions. So again, I can't quite point to the code, but in a practical perspective, those communications happen.
They do have the loop closed with the municipality.
Can I ask another question?
Please.
Just go through the procedure now. If we go, it's November, there's the application. The application is approved. The life safety certificate from the fire marshal Does that have to be presented before they actually pick up the license or?
No, they are not actually even presenting us that certification. They are attesting to the fact that they are receiving that certification. And, you know, as Amy reported, then that communication goes through the building department, then comes back to us. For example, like this 12 months,
Yeah.
this fire marshal won't come out and do any certifications until,
Right.
so early, at the earliest, late spring.
Yeah.
And so there is just, that wiggle room, that grace period, but so they're certifying that they're going to have this done, but they're not handing us a certificate from that fire marshal.
Okay, which makes it that much more important. That There's some sort of a connection that comes along the way. Okay.
And as we're speaking, I'm looking through some old notations in my communications with the state fire marshal. When we started this conversation, we dealt with the latter portion of this provision saying, said certification shall be issued within 12 months of submittal of the application. The reason for that, and from the fire marshal himself, or his inspections are valid for 1 year. So that's how we have current inspections, and ensuring that you don't have one and then you think you're good for a number of years. You have to have an inspection each and every year.
Right. Great. Any other questions?
On
Go ahead, Bill.
page 5, is it okay, Millie? You jumped there. Where we took out sign and date and put authorize. So how's that documented? Is that just by the signature at the end of the application?
Yeah, and actually there is a certification box in which they're checking and saying that they're attesting to the fact that their site plan has not changed to what is uploaded in
Gotcha.
the application.
One of the things, and I don't know where it would fit in here, that I had brought up and kind of when we talked about control and contain, it seems like over the years, we've gotten away from areas of serving designated, at one time, it seemed like it was just inside the building, and it was easy for everyone to make a little bigger loop and a bigger loop, and now it's the whole property, and which I think becomes problematic. And I don't know if there is a way that, if they identify, and I'm going to just use the surf because it came up was a good example where the surf has, they basically serve inside for the most part, but they circled the whole property because they wanted to be able to use that outside area to do a wedding or whatever it might be over behind the Blue Dory to the left. So they circled it, which I would do the same. I didn't know if there was a way that I'd like to see us try to bring this back in somehow, that those areas are defined and have a control and contained area, how they contain and control the area, how they serve the alcohol. But is there a way, using because it's a good example, the surf, that if they were going to do that, that without having to come through us, is there a way through the police department or through your office where if they're going to expand, that it can be that where they present that plan for that portion of the property? Because it just seems like now it's from edge to edge, and it's kind of it's morphed out. And in some places, take like a Captain Nick's, it's pretty well contained by its walls and so forth, and it's pretty easy to. There's other places, whether we used to have this when we had this problem down at Champlin's back in the day when Stone Trowser would have the party and would set up the tent and there was no way to control it, and so we had to have the fencing and so forth. So I don't know where it would fit in, but I think it's something that we need to kind of look and get back to a little bit as opposed to just the circle.
We are the liquor commission and we set the expectation.
Right.
And so that would be a matter of us saying, provide us with I think, I think things got a little tweaky when we moved to the computer application, the online application. That was a rough year. Like for the applicants, it's hard. A lot of people don't use a computer all the time. And, but if we say we want your serving area defined, your consumption area defined, and that's that.
So we just did this. First of all, you're right, Bill. I'll be honest with you. I was not aware of this creeping. And the person who pointed it out to me and has been out front on it is our colleague Molly. And we just did it with the new pizza place across from the bagel shop. Remember?
Right.
She had basically the entire property highlighted in yellow.
Yeah.
And I don't know who, I think it might have been Tristan, said, yeah, but that spot sort of from the driveway over to the sidewalk, really, that's not a place you ought to be serving. So her perimeter was changed therefore. So I think it's incumbent on us to be paying attention to the highlighter. And I think, I don't mean to be presumptuous, but I think this is part of what you're asking. So we limit, I hate to keep using them as an example, but they're a good example. We limit the surf to their serving area, which is basically from where the bar is on Water Street, out to their back patio. But they say to us, well, we circled the whole thing because we may want to have a wedding up on that hill. Well, is there a process for them to have a wedding on that hill without our having, as the liquor commission, without our having to, to enable them to encircle the entire property and therefore kind of anything goes?
I did talk to Nick, and I had this conversation, and the response was that you are the liquor board, you are the one that gives the authority, and I don't believe that you can, pass that authority on to somebody else. Nick, is that correct?
Yes, Millie, and you put it better than I would. And Molly, you put it great as well. The liquor board derives its authority from the state of Rhode Island. So the sovereign of the state gives local cities and towns, generally the town councils, their ability to issue these licenses. For the town council sitting as a liquor board to then delegate it further, I'm uncomfortable with, and I think there's certainly law or certainly argument against that. So I agree with Molly's take, and yes, Millie, that's accurate.
So I would assume that, if the Surf Hotel was having a wedding up on the hill, they would know pretty far in advance. And we could have some,
They'd have to apply for,
yes.
what is it, a
special
special use, I think, or special expansion.
Yeah.
And expansions could be granted for a particular time for a particular use.
I would imagine so, yeah.
Yeah.
To add another fly in the ointment here.
No, it's all really
Yeah,
worth.
for
And it's just, and I don't think any of the listen, if I had a bar or a property, I'd circle the whole thing too. So I don't think I was trying to get away with anything. I just think it's, when we look back, we say, why does that happen there? Well, because we had that.
Yeah.
Is there, or can we have a distinction between the type of serving? So for instance, I have waitresses that go out and bring you a drink as opposed to I set up a bar out in the middle of the field. Do we have that authority to that type of, no,
We
define
are
the two different
we are
services?
the liquor authority. So
What?
if we say you can, you can only set up a bar if you can control that bar. If you cannot control that bar, meaning, if you have, you're serving, but you can't see where people are going with their drinks, you can't control the perimeter, then no, you can't have that bar. You need to have enough staff. You
No,
need to
I
have
understand.
enough, you have to have your perimeter defined. You need to have signage. I mean, this is what we're saying in here, I believe, is that you need to have signage that says no alcohol beyond this point. I mean, that is what I read in here.
So let me give you an example. Take the National, which I think does a great job. If they have an area in the back with fire pits where they serve and they have people come and bring drinks and so forth. If they wanted to set up a bar outside there, would they have to change? In other words, do they define? Is it defined where a physical bar is, or is it?
That's up to us,
No,
I believe.
I would say no. In most cases, each specific bar is not laid out on the site plans.
But we could ask for it to be.
that's what I'm asking. Can we go that specific in?
I would say that this would be the place for you to be to be putting that in? Would be part of your rules and regs.
So I guess then my question, maybe to Nick or to Millie would be is there, would it make sense for us when people ask for expanded area to define what type of serving of alcohol? Is it waitress service or is it is it going to be a physical bar setup? I remember this was an issue going back probably 30 years ago when they put the bars on the porch of say the National and so forth. There were never any bars out there, and when they did, it was an issue that went back and forth, or they kind of moved its way into that. So, and I'm not saying not to have the bar on that porch. I'm just saying if you have an area, again, say like should we consider what type of serving is outlined in it?
I think we absolutely can. We are the liquor board. We would also want to consider that maybe from a standpoint of noise, right? So exterior bars are significantly noisier than interior bars to the neighbors. So, right? I mean, like if somebody is.
They do it now. So.
Can we ask Nick? So are you, I think what you're looking for is a distinction between a consumption area, a service area, and sort of I don't have a right word for the last one, but a distribution center.
Oh, yes.
Nick, is there provision for us to make those distinctions between where you could sit with alcohol, where you might have waitress service or staff service, and where you might have an actual physical bar?
Sure, and these are great questions. The hallmark of a board's authority sitting as a liquor control board is that you folks have the authority to impose reasonable conditions on liquor licenses, so long as those conditions are related to the reasonable control of alcoholic beverages. So, Bill, to your questions, much of those are fact intensive. So, for instance, if you have a bar out in a field somewhere that's not monitored, that may give you pause as to who is drinking from it or that establishment's ability to control it. And you may consider a condition that it shall be staffed at all opening hours, or it may not be used at all. So it's a very fact-intensive inquiry that you would have to base your condition on. But if you're looking for something to hang your hat on, you have significant authority to impose conditions on the control of alcohol, so long as those conditions are reasonable.
So I guess my point would be is if the surf wanted to set up a bar on the beach and they had put some fence around it contained, would we want to?
They cannot set up a bar on the beach because that's not within their, yeah.
The hypothetical.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? In other words, and it's just something I think we should think about because I think, service and the two different is.
So here's the real question you might be getting at that I didn't see at first, right? If you go to a place where there is no waitress service, right? And I've got to go to the bar and I say, well, I'll just go get up there and get drinks for everyone, right? Now I'm getting 8 drinks, as many as I can carry. They didn't proof anybody at my table. They maybe proofed me when I bought those drinks at the bar, but they didn't proof anybody in my party back at the table, which is maybe why what you're saying might be the appropriate way to set it up, to say that we expect a minimum of waitress server, cocktail service. Like, so the cocktail waitress is responsible for checking all of your IDs, right? So I'm, you know what I'm saying? Like, otherwise you end up with a situation where the one who's 22, 23 can buy the drinks for everybody. I think that's what you're getting at, or maybe that isn't what you're getting at.
I think that's part of your contain and control is that you have to have that. I'm talking about, can you set up a bar, another bar outside the property? I guess if it's flush, you may not need a permit. But I'm saying that's what I'm talking about, the difference between service and and setting up, like I said, a mobile bar that you pull out into the field and you pull onto the beach or whatever it might be. So it's just, I think it's something we should think about that's why it's important, I think, when they define not only where they're serving, but how they're serving.
So, a couple things. One is, and I will grant, that I think the council, excuse me, the Board of License Commissioners, has perhaps not over the years engaged as much in this as we have recently. But a lot of this stuff is within our powers by virtue of the powers that we're granted. We are the liquor board. But I also would not be offended if we had a 5G in these that required an applicant to identify where the liquor is being served.
It should be to scale because they're using the flat map, which is not an accurate map.
So in other words, where are the bars?
So they're gonna get.
I mean, we could put something in like we
I
did with
think-
noise that all alcohol service needs to happen within 25 feet of the main building.
I think Millie and Amy are checking to see whether I've suggested something that's already in the ordinance.
Right. So I think what we're looking at and saying, does this already accomplish that? Would
Right.
be 4A, a brief written description of the premise identifying the specific location where liquor is to be served or consumed. And also D4, which is a site plan drawn to scale, identifying the exact location where liquor is to be regularly served or consumed.
I have a tendency, I must admit, to prepare for that meeting, have that meeting, and then not remember what the drawings look like. So,
I don't know that they've been as robust as.
yeah.
So that's something we can administer differently, but I think the language is here
Okay.
for us to do that.
That's perfectly fine. But when I think of those pictures, I think of yellow highlighter around. Multiple pieces of property. Yeah, or even just sort of around a piece of property as opposed to here's where our bar, here's where the bar. But
Yeah, but we do have the language to require it. to be
yeah,
more
yeah,
specific.
yeah. That's why this is helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, I would suggest to anybody on the board to call the Department of Business Regulations and have a list of questions and talk to the people at DBR about a lot of this too, because they're super informative and they can let you know what other towns do, what
They
is
have a staff
within
person
purview to
dedicated to you
do.
now, don't they, Molly?
They what?
They have a staff person dedicated to you now, I think.
They, to me.
So,
Hotline with them.
so my question isn't that we have the authority. My question is it the desire of the board? Do we want to go to that level where identify what are hard fixed bars and so forth? A little more detailed of that. And then, like I said, if there's a waitress service goes beyond that, that's not so much the concern, but more of, where you're going to physically be setting up bars, whether they be portable or whatever it might be, detailed. So that's kind of more, and it sounds like, Amy, you're saying, Amelia, that we have it within here to be able
Yeah.
to do it. So it isn't so much a rule change. It would be more of a description of what we're requiring of them.
And a little bit of discipline on ourselves
Yeah.
during that meeting in November where we say, where's your bar?
Yeah, and
You know?
and I don't
Yeah,
think this is.
right. That's on us.
Well, I just meant, do we have, it was this consensus that we want to go to that
Be more
that little more
specific.
level of detail. I think it's good that we're not trying to pull, someone sets up whatever it might be, a permanent, whatever bar thing, now we're trying to pull it on back. As opposed to, it's easier if we know what it is up front and then.
Yeah. I'd be super happy if
Yeah.
somebody else would ask them those questions. I do ask them those questions. Also be super happy if anybody here had called DBR prior to this hearing tonight, because then you would all understand what an F license really is. So I find it really frustrating that nobody's using the resource that is available to us.
Can I have a motion to approve these as amended? Oh, I'm sorry. Nancy.
Yeah, I got one
realize I had a
more.
question.
Page 4, under E, relief. We went through this with the, with Chris Willie and, what was the other one? Number 1, any non-compliance with the regulation or rule, and Nick, this may go to you for some word, was due to mistake, inadvertence, surprise, excusable neglect, or other just cause. Both of those sort of tied into purchases or timing for leases and the like, which can we somehow take a look at that language and or do you think other just cause covers everything?
I think other just cause, I'm going to say two things that conflict with one another. I think other just cause covers everything. I also think you need a standard that you're going to uniformly apply to all circumstances. And we saw that just in the past couple months where we've applied this a number of times. So I'm comfortable as it is. I think it will cover anything that comes before the board in which somebody seeks relief from the strict language of our regulations. And I think we did a good job applying it, frankly. Nancy, I think they were your motions, so take that as a compliment. But I think we did a good job. And I'm comfortable with it unless a member of the board has a particular concern as to how it could cause us trouble down the road.
No, okay, I think, let's ride with it, because we
Okay.
didn't get any objection those 2 times.
Can I have a motion to approve the ordinance as amended? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Next, we have to set a public hearing date for our historic preservation, yada, yada. Is this, what's the date, Millie?
August 20th.
August 20th. Can I have a motion to set a public hearing date of August 20th for the proposed historic district ordinance?
So moved.
I have a question after a second.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yep.
This one that we have now, has this been expanded a little bit from the first one? The properties?
I don't know. I assume we'll hear that at the public hearing. This is
Okay.
just to set a public hearing.
Yes, well, the planning board did expand from their original proposal, adding Plat 5, Lot 90, throughout their public hearing process. So it likely is different than the notice that was sent to the council for the planning board public hearing. And you'll have some supporting materials outlining that and the staff report that the planning board received.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, because we're gonna need some
Yeah.
rationale for what they're doing.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to set August 20th as the date. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amy, can you give us a legislative update?
This I would love to do.
Yes.
And the council's gotten this by email, but just to close the loop for anyone who has been following the process, all 4 pieces of legislation specific to New Shoreham have passed into law. So that was the landing fee, increasing the landing fee for New Shoreham from 50 cents to $1, which is on our agenda for later. The tax classification, which is enabling, allowing New Shoreham to adopt a tax classification plan, which includes non-owner and owner-occupied property, and to adopt separate tax rates. This is really getting at being able to, if the council chooses, offer a reduced tax rate to those who may rent their properties year-round. So an expansion of the homestead was our goal there. The third piece was the water district legislation that clarifies that New Shoreham be required to service only its identified water district, which the council has the authority to expand but that we do not have to serve the entire island, which was a point of uncertainty. That's actually a huge one long-term. And then the school bond principal and interest being reimbursable, which is great. So we're very excited to have all 4 of those passed. I'll pause for a question and then talk about some of the other non-New Shoreham ones, just so that people can know what happened with those as well.
I would just say, I know it was a pretty harem-scarum session. And I, to the extent that I was involved, I thought you did a terrific job of working with and managing May 4th and taking from the council table direction around the stuff that we viewed as critical. So thank you for that.
So on the other pieces of legislation that will impact New Shoreham, the first is that the short-term rental whole house tax did go through. That's a 5% tax, and it will be distributed just like the hotel tax is. So that's 25% of the 5% on whole house short-term rentals will come back to New Shoreham. That's effective starting January 1st, 2026. And the estimate for us is about $125,000. That's a conservative estimate.
Is there any restriction on how that's meant, Amy?
No, not that I've seen. Again, we haven't totally seen all the final components. We're still parsing the budget bill, which is a pretty big document, but I have not seen any restrictions. Again, it's coming through just like the hotel tax revenue. So
That would usually go into the general.
into the general fund. Yep. The other related piece is the 1% increase in the local hotel tax from 1% to 2%. We had talked about that being enabling, and we might have been supportive of that. We didn't ultimately submit a resolution. It is not enabling. It is a change from 1% to 2%. So that will flow back to New Shoreham. Our estimate is about $240,000 in additional revenue on that. I think there might be mixed feelings. Glad to have the revenue, but maybe it wasn't necessarily something we made a decision on supporting. That is also effective January 1, 26.
And that again, like the other, goes into the general fund.
Yes, that'll be a general fund piece. The conveyance tax, some of those increases did come through. So those will be on property transfers. That revenue is restricted back to housing production and housing resources. So that stays at the state level.
Can you just explain that a little bit? Because I think the next one you're going to talk about gets confusing to people a little bit.
Sure. So the conveyance tax is already in existence, and that's on property transfers. So there are a whole number of taxes that you know better that happen at a property closing, but the conveyance tax is one of them. This increases that conveyance tax. I believe there are now 2 tiers, or there are 2 tiers, and they've been increased depending on the value of the transfer. But the additional revenue that flows through that is going back to the state.
So is this the one that over 800,000, it's a certain percentage, and then over whatever the next one is, whatever, it's a different percentage?
Yeah.
It's only on the amount over that. So the first 800 would not be.
I believe that the conveyance tax has been increased at a base level. So that means anyone from $1 or $100 up to 800,000. Then the next tier is 800,000 and above, and that has also been increased. So I think the increase impacts both tiers.
And I think the takeaway on that aligns with the next item that I'll talk about, is the uses. So again, that goes to housing production and housing resource and affordability. Let me just finish the sentence. And so it will become more and more important for us to find a way for these housing dollars to come back to New Shoreham.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So on that increase you said there's a conveyance tax from 0 to 800,000. That got increased also. That increase does not come back to us though, correct?
No.
And is that increase, do we know that, is that earmarked towards, I think it was homeless or something like that? Or
Again, one is housing production and one is housing resourcing. So it's carved into 2 different buckets, but both at the state level, not any local
Thank you.
earmark. So then the fourth one is the state property tax. which has a lot of caveats, but properties assessed over $1 million that are not rented for more than 183 days. A couple other stipulations, basically a non-owner occupied property tax administered by the state, beginning with the tax year July 1, 2026. And again, that does not flow back to the municipality. That is all dedicated to what they're calling the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Fund, which is state level. And so with those three different housing elements, it's unlikely that under the current framework, we will be able to access any of those dollars that flow from New Shoreham up to the state level. So I think that'll be something that we work on over the next 12 months, is figuring out how we are able to take advantage of the dollars that we are sending upstate.
Could you get a sense, Amy, of how they're going to promulgate regs on this stuff? Because it strikes me that we ought to be pretty actively engaged in the process of figuring out how they're going to administer, et cetera. And we may do that theoretically in conjunction with other towns. Because, I mean, I know that there was some discussion, at least, of saying, look, this can't all be city X, Y, and Z. So it just seems like this is something that we would want to work on in the interim.
I think there's.
I was just gonna say, I mean, this is something that we were not happy with the League of Cities and Towns, but it seems to me this is something that they should absolutely start dealing with, because there must be several.
They have been very silent on this topic since our letter to them. If it was not part of any of their communications, they're not identifying it as revenue that flows back to the cities, because ultimately it didn't. So they have not mentioned it since, but I do think we need to continue to push and to be aware of how we can influence the process.
Yeah.
I think there's two major issues here. One is the precedent that's being set by the state tax on property. Other than vehicles, the state has always left that to the municipalities. It was not a source of revenue. I think this is a real slippery slope. And, everyone, I think the majority of people don't fully understand it and grasp it. They think it's the Taylor Swift tax as it's been. It's just going to affect, the Jay Leno's and the Taylor Swifts. But the way the properties are evaluated, particularly with our community, it's going to hit this community pretty hard. I think if you have a house at 2 million, you'll be paying, I think it's an additional $2,500 if it's at 250. But nevertheless, I think the big thing is the precedent's being set as one, and the second is it affects more people than I think a lot of people realize. Because you were saying, Amy, if you don't occupy the house, so if I rent out the house,
Again, it's very early in the interpretations of these, but it does appear in the statute itself that if you rent it more than half the year, it may also be exempt. So again, which is, the upside, trying to promote year-round rentals, not just a seasonal rental. Or if you occupy it more than 183 days out of the year, then you could be exempt.
So
And,
let
the
me
other
just-
the other piece of that is the other end, what's collected, the equitable distribution of that money.
Yes.
I mean,
right.
we may send them a lot of money and we may get nothing back at all.
We're better off taxing our own homes where it comes here.
So, if the council is amenable, I would like to keep this on our radar, even though
Yeah.
sort of the bill has passed, to make sure we're staying on top of the touch points, and where if at any point we want to be more aggressive in our responses.
And let our legislators who we were not happy with know that, we don't expect to find their name on anything connected with this. And
Well, their name was on the bill that this was introduced at.
yeah,
And I realized that wasn't the bill that went through the budget, but, that ship has sailed, and very disappointed in both of them from that end of it. Is there anything, and I know it's, there probably isn't, but is there Is there any like challenge to that can be taken? And I'm not saying we should bear the cost of that, but I'm curious as to whether it be us or whether it be how that avenue works.
I think that's why I'd like to be able to stay on top of this and keep bringing it back to the council to see what some of the reactions are in some of the other communities as this rolls out in a more formal way, and maybe people have a better understanding of the impacts.
So do you feel that, I think Keith, you kind of inferred this, that once people realize how far this actually goes, there'll be a little more attention paid to it possibly?
We seem to be the loudest voice, and that's a surprise.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I think it kind of just slipped under the radar with all the other things. As you said, it was kind of a catastrophic.
It's crazy to me that it hasn't gotten more attention.
Yeah.
It
Well,
is,
and
but,
I think
you know,
people diminished
it's
it
a
by
funny
calling
thing.
it the Taylor Swift tax.
Yeah.
Right. So when that diminished it, and obviously nobody thought that applied to them. It only applied to Taylor Swift, right?
Yeah, and who
So,
cares? You know,
like,
but exactly.
great, but apparently everybody is just like
My
Taylor. But I do have a question. If you could go back to, could you clarify on what you said about the 6-month rental? What does that mean?
So I don't have the legislation up, but I believe that if you rent it for more than 6 months out of the year, meaning you have a long-term tenant in there, you may also be exempt.
So we may have homeowners, so even if they rent in the summer, if they were to rent their home to someone for 6 months in the winter, let's say, or fall and winter, they could get out of this.
That's my very early reading, yes.
Okay.
Can you send us a copy of the final, that particular bill?
Yeah, I'll carve it out. Like I said, it's still in the budget bill.
Yeah.
So I'll narrow it down and send you just that piece. Yep. Happy to. So that's where things wrapped up with legislation.
Maybe you should start with the property tax thing so that we end on a.
And on the high.
It was really well done. It's more than we've ever gotten, you know, in my tenure. So thank you. All right, item 10, discuss and act on a request from Henry DuPont of the Block Island State Airport Stakeholders Group to address the issue of the Rhode Island Airport Corporation eliminating the Office of State Aeronautical Inspector. Nancy, you want to handle this?
Henry, you're there. You know, I would like to approach this as not supporting the individual, but the position. So if you could kind of explain the importance of having this position, because it's been, as I understand it, eliminated, not just the body that was in it,
Right.
but the position.
Yeah, hi, and Henry DuPont.
Will you make sure your microphone's? on?
It has a green light,
Thank you.
and I can hear myself over the speaker. So, I would call myself the Block Island State Airport advocate, and we've been fighting to make our airport the most welcome, safest, and best managed general aviation airport in the state. And it's been an uphill battle because ever since Commissioner Kelly, who was a general aviation pilot, left in 2016, the new executive director of RIAC is all about TF Green Airport at the expense of the 5 outlying airports. And they are treating Block Island especially like chopped liver. And we've been through a dozen issues with them, you know, including raising the landing fee to $35 here only and not at any of the other airports. We fought that back. They put out the airport attendants contract and they left Block Island off the list. So we didn't have an airport attendant for 6 months until the town council, our state legislators, and Jim Hummel went to the mat with them to get one hired and get that back. The parking issue up there, they wanted to charge everyone who parked up there $10 a night, which would have been $3,560, or is it 60, whatever, $650 per to leave your car up there, and we beat that back. We had 4.9 million allocated by the FAA to repave the airport, and we lost that, and over a period of time, we gradually got that back. So, I mean, it's just been an uphill battle. And this is the latest thing that's affecting all the airports and all flight safety in Rhode Island. And in my letter, I identified what this office does. This is the airport safety official for all the airports, including TF Green, and he's been completely flat out busy promoting airport safety. And what we think happened, why this office was eliminated, was there are hundreds of safety issues at the 5 outlying airports, which I list in my letter, a number of them. And he's been writing those up every month. And when nothing happens, he says, what's going on? Oh, don't worry, that's deferred. That's a deferred issue, you know? And I mean, when there aren't any taxi or runway lights on in Westerly because they don't work, or the Newport Airport rotating beacon doesn't work, or North Central, the 4 taxiways don't have any lights. And I mean, there's cracks in the pavement over at Westerly that you can put a Coke bottle in. You have to avoid them when you're landing. It's like a pothole in the runway. So this gentleman, the state aeronautical inspector, started copying this stuff to the FAA, and that was the end of him. It wasn't a team player. In other words, it's easier to get rid of the office than to fix the problems. Now that the office is gone, we don't have any safety issues. My biggest concern this hour is if an aircraft gets disabled on our runway, because blows out a tire or something and is sitting sideways in the middle of the runway, there's no one here that has the authority to do anything about it unless, you know, the Iftikhar himself comes down here, or the FAA comes down. And that typically takes 3 to 5 days for them to respond to an issue like that. So in other words, if this happens, the airlines are going to be circling the island, for hours or days until we can resolve it. And so we need to have for all the reasons I listed in my letter, this office restored, to have a professional put in there and put them back to work. And the sad thing is it going to take a serious accident before people wake up and do something about this? And as I said, this is a really serious issue. And I'm hoping that the town council will immediately contact RIAC and tell them this, you know, what are we, the only state in the country without a state aeronautical inspector? What's going on here? We need to get it resolved, and we need to fix all the things that I outlined are serious problems. And I'm hoping that you'll do that. If there's anything else I can say or do or get some extra help, I wrote a letter to the FAA, working with AOPA, which is the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. They're sending in something. But if cities and towns that have airports don't do something, they'll just let this go. You know, it's like, you know, there's no reason for them to consider it further. And they're not saving much money. This, you know, the office doesn't have a big budget. So, and it's at our expense. So if you have any questions or anything I can help you with, I'm happy to, but we need to do something about this tomorrow, please.
So can I?
Of course, yes.
So I was sort of taking a look at the idea that we could send a letter, and that we could copy to Westerly, Newport's government. Where's North Central?
North Central is in Lincoln.
Lincoln. And then there's Quonset.
And Quonset's in North Kingston.
Just asking for what is the plan? We recognize that this is a very critical position. Was that?
Sorry.
You know, what's the plan going forward? And consider that their funding comes through the legislature, right? I mean, Snohomish used to do
Well,
that.
RAC is meant to be from their own fees and stuff like that. They're meant to be self-supporting. But they do get some funds from the legislature, but it's not on a regular basis. It's for special projects or whatever. The other thing is, which has nothing to do with the Office of Aeronautical Inspector, but Block Island and Westerly, because we have our own regional airline with more than 10,000 enplanements a year, they're actually around 35,000. We each get $1 million a year for airport improvements from the FAA, along with 465 other airports that fit into that category across the country, Sioux Falls, you know, South Dakota, whatever. That money goes to RIAC, and they have some discretion to spend it at other airports for an emergency or if there's a greater need or whatever. But in the end, the chickens are meant to come home to the airports that those funds are allocated for. And this has been going on now for 14 years that we've had that number of enplanements. And they are keeping the money and spending it. So I wrote the FAA a couple of years ago, where did our $1 million go from Westerly and Block Island? And they said, oh, just a second, RIAC's spending it on restroom improvements at TF Green. And I mean, and now we have the airport was voted as having the best restrooms in the state.
Yeah.
You know, with our funds. So, I mean, I designed a plaque, little bronze plaque to send them, the design for it, to put up in the restrooms that said these restrooms were improved with funds from the Block Island State Airport. And sadly, they didn't post the plaques up. But in any case, this is serious stuff and we need to do something about it.
Henry, so they've eliminated this position.
Yes.
Have they publicly said what they put in its place?
No, there's no. I don't know who does these things now, that the state aeronautical inspector. If you call and say there's a drone buzzing over my house or there's a low-flying plane, or if there's an accident, I don't know who they dispatch to do that. The previous gentleman also was a state helicopter pilot, and he was down here typically within an hour or two if a plane went off the end of the runway or something else like that happened. And he is also a terrific advocate for general aviation at his own peril. So, I mean, they need to reestablish the office and to make it happen. You know, hire somebody and make it happen.
And that's, I mean, I know there are, over the years, there's a myriad of complaints with how, you know, with how they're dealing with Westerly, with Block Island. Unless people object, I'd like to focus just on this at the moment and see if we could establish some response.
Personally, I'd like Amy to be the point person who interacts with RIAC and says, what's going on with this? And then if you suggest that there should be the force of the town council, such as it is, or that we coordinate with the other host communities, we should do that.
We can do that. But yeah, I do like the idea of starting with a very narrow scope so that we're not putting everything on the table, but
Yeah.
getting an answer to this safety inspector question.
Yeah, my idea was that we use this as an entree for you to establish, you know.
Yeah, I don't want to cut our nose off to spite our face either, you know, and I think that if we can articulate on the, you know, not the personnel issue, but the fact of.
That's gone. That personnel issue is gone. I spoke to him today and he said he couldn't be happier that he's not working in such a toxic environment. So I don't expect him to want to go back.
No, and I don't think that's a fight we want to take out.
Right.
We just
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm totally agreeing with you that it has nothing to do with the person. It's the office. And when I list everything the office does, it's so important that that work continues. And we don't know. If you speak to Mark Humboldt and say, oh, well, who do you call if a plane goes off the end of the runway? He says, we don't know who to call. That it hasn't been identified. That's a serious issue.
Keith, do we need a motion in order for Amy to do that, or is that something?
Just ask you to do it.
Were you gonna say something, Tristan?
And I like the
Okay.
idea of getting the other towns on board. Also, I know some of the other airport advocates at those other airports, and they might be able to better inform their own community about what's happening in the general sense with this issue. And so I'll try to put that together. You know, I know like, you know, who else would be happy to work with us to make this
Even if you just let them know that we're gonna be
Yes.
sending it, you know, and we'll let them know what
Yeah.
response we get. I don't want to burden Amy with having to deal with.
Yeah, no,
Five
you know,
towns.
I'm just trying to think of ways to get the other towns more interested. I haven't really heard back from anyone else. And I haven't heard back from the FAA, but I haven't, you know, though, you have to,
Also,
Yeah.
need to find out who the backstop is on this now.
Yeah.
That
Right.
position has worked with this town over the years on many incidences
yeah,
and has been, you know, vital.
super helpful
Yeah.
to the
His
town.
Position as the
At
inspector.
his own peril.
Task force.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Henry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. All right, let's review your correspondence with RIDOT.
And we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but
Letter to follow.
but I did want to share, that this went out as part of our three-step plan. We did execute the agreement. We've put them on notice. Now we move into the next phase, which is hopefully getting them out there and also coordinating this week with May 4th on a strategy.
Yeah.
That will likely include our legislators inviting some of their colleagues to tour the facilities and the roads, particularly during the summer, because I want them to see the volume of activity. You know, when you add the roads and the traffic, it hopefully will make an impact. But with the anticipation that those will be the people considering whatever funding stream we're able to put together for next legislative session. So again, happy to take any questions, but
Just in the absence of anybody coming, if we can't get them, can we get a video, you know, at the height of the summer?
Sure.
That can be played, you know, in the fall.
that's a great idea.
Everyone loves to come in August.
Well, that's the other thing. I think we can get a pretty good group together
And-
during the summer.
And I would hope that we don't also give up on, I mean, this is not a lot of money in the scope of what DOT's budget is. And I know we're gonna help work with them to get it in for the next year, but it'd be nice, even if it's a portion of it, we still can't push to see if they can't find something in the budget, their budget too, you know, so I'll leave that up too, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't just throw in that towel, because it's really not a lot of money in the scope of DOT's overall budget.
We're still waiting on is it tips in September? Is that when they?
Yeah, there's a public hearing on the 10th. Peter Friedrichs from Libra is going to be there. And we are submitting a few letters in support from Jim that will solidify his testimony. So
Great. Thank you, Amy. Collection agreement?
I'm
Item
gonna-
12?
Excuse me, Keith, I'm gonna do this.
Okay.
So you have a proposed collection agreement with Interstate Navigation that reflects the change in the landing fee. Substantially, the rest of the agreement is almost identical. We've made some minor administrative changes, but we haven't changed the foundations of the agreement otherwise. This is essentially the same agreement they've used for Narragansett as well. And so they are looking to, if everybody, all three parties can adopt, they would like to implement both landing fee changes simultaneously on the 10th, which is why we wanted to make sure to get this in front of you as soon as possible.
And what's the percentage of the fee that they take for administering this?
So it is 15%. And
On
that,
both Narragansett and Block Island?
I believe it is the same in Narragansett, and the percentage has stayed the same from one agreement to the next.
And the only question I have is that most contracts are signed by our town manager. This is designed with,
We kept the same structure that was in place in the previous agreements, so that's how that wound up that way.
I mean, I'm sure you can sign your name like anybody, but it just seems like the first wardens are gonna change. Hopefully, the town manager doesn't change as dramatically, you know, in the course of 3 to 4 years. I just thought generally you sign things with our approval when it's necessary.
I don't feel strongly about it either way. Like I said, we just kept the structure that had been in place without amending it. So happy to change it. I think the legal authority is the same.
Can I have a motion to approve this agreement? Second.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Bill? That's our intercom system. Keith shuts into the microphone. What a class act. Item 13, discuss an act to give advice and consent. Go ahead, Amy.
Sure. So this was on our agenda previously, so happy to hopefully wrap this up, which is the recommendation to adopt the amended job description that we've discussed for the town clerk and director of administration and appoint Millie McGinnis Hyatt to that position.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion's been made and seconded. Millie, this makes me happy. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for everything you have done. The progress that I've seen has been really nothing short of extraordinary during the course of your tenure. So thank you. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
And then we have the employment agreement that goes along with.
Oh, we got a pair?
We would, we would like to pay her.
Sorry.
We would like to pay her. We would like to keep her for a 2-year term. And so that's what's proposed. And this is aligned with the budget that we had put together as well. It fits within the budget, even that we had put some in contingency.
Millie, I know in all extraordinarily positive ways, your life is new and open, and I really appreciate the commitment that you're making to us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion to approve this contract? Second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Items for future agendas. Can we do a debrief on just the first long weekend at some point? I think just a debrief on the first
The
long
4th of
weekend
July.
of the summer to see what worked, what didn't. work.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
is that okay?
That's great. Yep.
Yeah, I had that down too. I was calling it July 4th.
Oh, yeah. Not that there was anything wrong. I just think it's worth continuing the conversation, seeing what
Some icky
resources.
but-
Yeah.
Also, can I ask?
Yes,
this?
please.
Put the license of car rentals on?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And Millie Amy just asked somebody.
So I'm sorry.
Somebody just.
I sent your request around to
Oh,
the
okay.
agenda team.
Yes. Thank you for raising it. Paul?
Missed the first 2 minutes of this meeting because I was talking to Leo outside. I just wanted to say a little bit about the 4th this past weekend
Oh, good.
and just kind of fill you guys in a little bit. It was a 3-day weekend, which is pretty nice. And we had great weather outside of that little tempest that came
Yes.
through. I was sitting on my porch and just watching boats
Wow.
spinning in the harbor going, glad I'm not Kate. You know, just pretty briefly, the weekend went really well. The 4th of July, which is pretty much our busiest day of the year. For the second year in a row, I just focused myself on the beach and I handed everything else to Sergeant DiMatteo. The parade, town, everything afterwards, I put it on his plate and I think he did a great job. All my CSOs, our dispatchers, all of our guys worked really hard, worked really well. The day went pretty well. We had some rescues that we had to do down on the beach for intoxicated individuals, which I'm not sure how we can completely eliminate that, but I have some more ideas. Again, each year that I do this,
Yeah.
we get a little better at it. And looking at last year and talking to Bill during the week about numbers of tickets that have been sold. And I looked at the schedule leaving here in the afternoon, 3, 5, 6:15. So I took all of the troopers and all of our guys. We went down on the beach at 2 and went through, handed out the garbage bags and said, start picking up your mess. When we come back through, if you're standing here with a beer, we're arresting you. So we got a little push of them to go on the 3. And then we went back at 4 and did the same thing. And then at 4:30, I had coordinated this with Joe Pacracca from DPW. He came down with the front end loader. And that's what we picked up all of the trash bags off the beach with. So
I
that,
thought you were going to say pick something else.
so, so that giant machine coming through that 4:30 also helps kind of push them along. And the idea was just to try to stagger them out so we didn't push, which we did last summer, push them all out at 5, 6 o'clock and then overload the boat. And then you have 500, 600 kids milling about town. I'd rather just keep them on the beach for a little bit and just keep pushing them out slowly but surely. So, that all went pretty well. And the kids cleaned up about 70-75% of the trash that they brought. And as is always the case, some of our island families came out, the Evanses, the Ryans, and a couple of our high school kids in particular. Finn Hines was down there for a couple hours. Kylie Ryan, and it's nice to see those kids take such pride in our community that they're down there trying to clean up somebody else's mess. So, all in all, the day went pretty well. We didn't have any major catastrophes, knock on wood, and we'll just work on a couple of things for next year to try to make it a little bit better.
Chief, I thought you guys did a good job. I thought your strategy of moving them down, as you had mentioned to me, there were almost 700 people that went at 3 o'clock, which is not, that's usually might have 400 or whatever.
Right.
And that really alleviated out on the other side. So, well, good job on that.
Yeah.
I think for the last couple of years, you've really employed a strategy that manages a challenging situation on that beach as well as it can be managed. This is, again, just as you said, this is about next year, but the thing that I assume the 5 of us are really interested in, one of the things we'd be interested in is, what resources, what new stuff, what do you think? That's the important thing to me. I have no expertise about how to manage that crowd, none, 0. But if there are tools, I'd love to hear about it.
Yep. And I think, as I said, we have ideas every time we do this.
Yeah.
Nick Palumbo, who is one of our Rhode Island State Troopers, he was out here for a couple of weeks earlier this summer. He's part of their drone unit. So he flew his drone up at 2 o'clock a couple of times and made a couple passes up and down the beach. So we have drone footage of the entire beach. He actually had footage of us taking one of the individuals off the beach in our ATV, out to the rescue. So looking at some of that, it also gives me ideas about, maybe using some snow fencing, keep them off the dunes and out of the dunes and things of that nature. So
interesting.
I'd love to find a strategy where we don't have 1,000 14 to 18-year-olds come to Block Island to get drunk in the sun and use our volunteer services excessively. I mean, the only one that makes out on this is the ferry companies. They're not out there buying food. In fact, some of them were like leaving on their restaurant tabs, and that was a problem. I'd love to find a way where this entire group doesn't gross out and turn off families who came for the day and now have to go back on the boat with them. You know, they're disgusting. And they didn't come with their parents. So if we could work with police departments on the mainland, maybe if we could work with the South Kingstown Police Department and the Narragansett Police Department to come up with some sort of message that says to the parents on the other side, like, this is what your disgusting children are doing over here.
And that was one of the things
The
that
drone footage would
we
be great.
have the Police Chiefs Association. We have Kara Cromwell. She's our public relations wizard. And that was one of the things that I had thought about, because a lot of this is a parenting issue,
Yeah.
right? It's not a me issue or a you issue. This is a parenting issue, but it's also not unique to us. There are a multitude of beaches on the Cape, and they have the same phenomenon. And I've talked to their chiefs, and it's the same thing, the same day. It's one day out of the year, and it just strains everybody's resources. So how do we prevent it? I don't
Has
know.
anybody tried pretty actively counter messaging on social media? Just because I can remember the year the Ballards thing was such a challenge. That one of the things I learned as a certified dinosaur when it comes to the social media stuff was how much that influences where kids go. And, you know, whether it's possible to counter message from New Shore PD or, you know, the Black Island Chamber, or, you know, I'm just curious about that.
They have an operation.
Yeah, the State Fusion Center.
Fusion Center, yeah, and they, you know.
And maybe it doesn't.
Several times it started out, you know, early spring, spreading the word that, you know, things are gonna be
Right.
cracking down here.
And that's where I think some of, you know, taking some of that video footage from the drone footage and sitting down with Kara and Amy and coming up with a message of what we want to put out. And, you know, Channel 10, Channel 12, Channel 6, they'll all air those messages for us. So it's just a matter of us now. It's another step for us to take a couple of months prior to start putting this together, put the message out that we really don't want this. We really don't like this.
Well, we also need coordination from the Tourism Council, who has funding for this sort of a thing,
Mhm.
the Chamber of Commerce, who has something.
Right.
I mean, I can't imagine that this is what business, if you want 1,000 people to come to Block Island for the day and you're a business owner, is that the 1,000 people you want coming?
Right.
Because they didn't spend any money, but they burned out our volunteers, and left a lot of garbage. You know, skipped out on some restaurant tabs. They were a problem. I think it went well. I'm not, you know, I do think you did a good job of it going well, but like, why can't we have it be different, right? You know, why can't we have the 1,000 people be families that came out to look at glass floats and watch the parade?
Yeah.
We had a couple. No, over 18.
Chief, it seems like it was a younger crowd, like almost a high school crowd, a good majority of them. Maybe I'm just getting older, but it looked like it was like a younger crowd also.
Yeah, I think they were younger. I don't think there's, and that's the same, as I said, with some of these other towns. It's the same thing. There are 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, and they all just invade these beaches. And I think a lot of it is, as you were saying, the social media aspect of it is somebody says, hey, let's go here, and everybody joins in, and then they're all going there.
they're
And
not old enough to go to a bar.
what's that?
They're not old enough to
Right.
go to a bar.
Right.
So they all had a giant reusable water bottle or two with them, and that's where they're bringing their liquor.
Mhm.
And they're going
That's
and
it.
drinking in the hot sun
Right.
and creating rescue problems.
Mhm. But here's the thing, right? You have a Fourth Amendment in our Constitution, right? They're in a water bottle. It's not a liquor bottle. How do we combat that? We can't just go grab it. Right? So that's a bit of the problem, and that's a part of the problem. Years ago, excuse me, when it was coolers, right? Interstate Navigation would take all the coolers, they would ask them for an ID. Right? Now they're bringing it in, like you said, the water bottles in their backpacks. We don't have that right to search them. We don't have that right to go in and take their things. We can't do that.
The thing that amazes me though is that, the shots from the beach, they're all standing, mobbed together.
Hmm.
There's not room for a chair or a
Nancy,
blanket.
you were doing shots on the
Hmm.
beach, did you say?
Yes. So it's,
They
Hmm.
did. I watched them all walk up Cornet Road. They didn't know there were no towels. There were no beach chairs. There were no umbrellas.
Pack of
And
water bottle.
leaving,
Or-
when I saw them, there was obviously no sunscreen.
No.
To some extent,
No.
to some extent, our strategy on these days is crossing our fingers and, hoping that there's not something catastrophic.
Hmm.
So the less over time, the less tightly we have to cross our fingers, the better. So, those are the things that, look, I heard just anecdotally that, because I was there for an appointment today, that the medical center was inundated,
Right.
and that makes me worry. Okay, we'll deal with, we're dealing with a 17-year-old drunk kid, and there are 8 of them taking beds at the medical center. What if something really bad happens? I'm not
Mhm.
saying that's not bad, but
Right.
that's what always worries, sort of gets me going. And I'm sure
Mhm.
it's not unique to me, but
Right.
like, what if something really catastrophic happens?
And I think, as I said, if we start working on some strategies for next year to
Yeah.
try to curb this. And the state police have always been extremely
Sure.
helpful with anything that we've ever needed.
One of the things that literally just occurred to me, Paul,
Mhm.
is what happens at some of the festivals.
At what?
At festivals, at music festivals, where you get you probably get a similar kind of thing where, a large group descends for one day, and they must have some,
They have big medical tents. and
they have a
hydration
triage
stations and-
system set up. I just,
And there's a fine line between, it's kind of like, we don't do shelters, okay, as a general rule. And so people tend to go home and so forth.
Yeah.
But you have to have in your back pocket, what are you gonna do, if we need to?
Yeah.
The same thing here. Where's that line? I know the chief has. Where's
Mhm.
that line? Do I
Yeah.
set this up and then am I making it okay? Cause there's another, it's a balancing thing for them.
Right.
We had
Yeah.
talked about it, and and if you pre-set it up from that end of it, then you're making.
It's almost like an invitation.
Yeah, so
right?
it's-
And that-
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And it's, and someone had brought up to me, why don't we bring garbage cans down there and pick those up at the end of the day? Well, they're not going to use them. Right. But when a policeman hands you the garbage bag, and it's also our opportunity to interact with them.
Yeah,
And it gives them that little bit
Sure.
of,
sure.
okay, my time to go has come.
Sure.
And away they go.
Yes.
And I think that's part of it. And we learned that with what happened behind the surf. The more you do things to make it convenient for them, the more they're going to come.
Right.
And that's the fine line that Bill's
Sure.
talking about.
Yeah.
So, we need to try to plan for some of this, but we also don't want it to be an invitation.
Cause they did set up across from the National there, and credit to the National, they sent over some food and water and so forth, and it did alleviate some, but I get what the chief's saying. That's a fine balance on that.
It was from the fire department.
Yeah.
the
fire
water.
Department also, yeah. And National Centers as well, so too, but the fire department was the women's auxiliary. I guess, also.
What's that?
Or Women's Auxiliary.
Ladies
Yeah.
Auxiliary.
And I think that particular example is a good one of walking that fine line.
Yeah.
That only happened once the medical center said, we are not available to accommodate anybody else. So let's do our best to keep everyone hydrated and vertical so that we don't have a cascading effect. So I think everyone sort of held out till the last moment and then said,
Right,
okay.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, we didn't want to be hospitable, but also couldn't send anybody else up.
You're right. Absolutely. Thank you.
But that was all. I just wanted to say that before.
Perfect. I have a motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor?